My name is Devon McFarland, but everybody calls me Coach Matt. You can find me on TactfulLove on Instagram, as well as my website, which is macrelationshipcoach.com. My mission is to help men build, strengthen, and sustain their long-term relationships by giving them tactics that allow for them to overcome conflict resolution. This keeps their family intact and their sanity intact by renewing the relationships that matter the most.
We have known each other for a very short amount of time, but in that period of time, I have learned the incredible wealth of wisdom that you have to offer really anyone who's interested in improving their relationship and really investing in the success of their relationship. So could you share a little bit about your history and how that ties into what you're doing today? Because I find that to be actually like one of the most absolutely intriguing parts of what you're doing.
So I have been an emergency responder for over a decade. And the one thing that I learned as emergency responder is there has to be tact in every emergency. So I show up to respond, especially whenever there's conflict.
And you do an incredible job of bringing really tangible examples of what it looks like and kind of using that same mindset of coming from that emergency response in people's relationships, treating it as if like if you're in an emergency in your relationship, this is how you handle that with tact in responding to that. So
yeah, it would be more so like an emotional emergency. You are dealing with some ego, and you need to figure out how to one tactic is when your ego is being drawn out, you drown it out. So how do you go about drowning out your ego? That's the number one thing.
So what is the most powerful act of love you've ever witnessed, and how did it inspire you to love more deeply or differently?
So last year in October, my mother passed away, and that moment, it was a very vulnerable moment for me. And one of the things with my mother's passing, we didn't have enough finances for funeral service. And I didn't realize that in order to conduct funeral services, there's an upfront cost. And that by default was approaching $10,000. Now that was a price point I wasn't prepared for, and neither was my mother. So I didn't know what to do, and I started a GoFundMe, and I got on my social media, and I just put that out there. I went to the networking groups that I have as far as colleagues goes. Through everybody that I've ever met. And it was powerful for me because there was so many people who showed up for me. Some people I'd never even met before. They just got the message and they showed me their support. And some of the people, and then of course, close friends, everybody showed up for me in a space where I never had that type of response. And when I saw that, I was like, man, this is, for me, it was act of kindness, but it showed me that love. And to your second question, how did it inspire me to show up? It inspired me to show up because I realized that people wanted to see me, people wanted to hear from me. I would say from 2021 up until that moment, I did not post anything. So I made a post the night before, and everybody was like, man, where you been? And then I made that post, and a lot of people showed up. So it made me realize that, you know what, I need to show up for the people who showed up for me. And on a bigger scale, I just need to show up on a bigger scale. I need to share more of my story, share more of the things, because I realize that people want me to show up. I never thought of that of myself. I never thought of it. But when I saw people show up for me, it just made me realize how much I want to show up for others.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm obviously so sorry about your mother, but I'm so glad that people showed up for you in that moment in need. That's one of the hardest times I can imagine, to even ask for help in that space.
That it was, especially when I never done anything like that.
So to need the help, to have that vulnerability to ask for help, and to have people show up for you, I'm so grateful that when you needed it in that moment, that love showed up for you.
Yeah.
And now you're turning around and showing up for others. It almost says that, like, paying it back.
Paying it back.
Yeah. What has been your biggest challenge or learning experience with love? And what did you personally learn from it?
Honestly, full transparency, my marriage. That has been the biggest challenge. I've been married for 6 years now. However, for 5 of those years, there was constant tension, and we just were not in a good space. And it challenged me to honestly bunker down and figure it out. I went from, how do I get out of here, to how can I make it work here? And that's when I started shifting my perspective in a way to where, if I could show up tactfully, then maybe this would work. If working on my responses versus my reactions, maybe this could work. And that was the biggest challenge with personal growth, love, because I had to learn how to love myself so I can love my wife better.
What are a few examples of what that tangibly looks like?
It looked like, before I walked in the house, I don't assume that I'm going to be disrespected. Before I walk in the house, I think of my partner as a partner versus somebody who is a thorn in my side. And again, if you change the way you see that person, you'll change how you'll show up for them. I believe that. There's this quote by Wayne Dyer, God rest his soul. It says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that is so true. So true. So biggest, I would say, an example is, I started changing the way I looked at my wife. And then everything changed. I changed how I saw my wife, and I changed how I showed up. Another example is not needing the validation from her. I won't go in too deep of a dive. However, there was a moment in our relationship where I felt like, I have done everything under the sun for you, and I deserve a parade. Nothing less than a parade. And
like Brooklyn, like Labor Day.
I mean, floats, all of it, right? Candy. I need the whole shebang. And I didn't get that validation. I realized, right? So what does it look like? It looks like an example of, I didn't need the validation. I stopped needing that type of validation for myself. And the relationship started getting that type of validation. So it was bigger than me. And that's a huge example. So the first example, again, highlighting that I had to change how I looked at my partner. In the second example, I had to change what I needed from my partner.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to show up for my partner differently.
Yeah.
And I was able to give to my partner differently.
And those are really powerful ways. I know we were talking earlier about how perception.
Oh, we can say perception, right? In the military, they say perception is reality,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Reality is reality,
Mm-hmm.
right? The reality is there's cameras going on and you and I are talking. I can't change the reality. It's nighttime outside. I can't change this reality. I can't change this building. But my perception of this reality is my experience as all of these cameras are going, the night is happening, and we're in this building. That is perception. How am I experiencing this?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was that quote.
What is the most meaningful way that you've shown love to someone, and what do you hope others can glean from your experience?
Fathering my oldest daughter.
Mm.
She, I inherited her. Right. I don't ever refer to her as a stepdaughter.
Mm-hmm.
And being there for her has probably been the most selfless act for any step parent.
Yeah.
That is a difficult job.
Mm-hmm.
You're challenging the norm, right, with a blended family, especially when you have the biological parents that have a presence.
Yeah.
However, I still show up for her. I'm there, daddy-daughter dates, the whole nine, and I'll be able to see her graduate, and that means the world to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is probably the biggest way that I've shown love for someone.
What do you hope others can learn from it?
I hope that others can learn that it's bigger than you.
Mm-hmm.
It's bigger than you, right? Knowing that I can create an impact, positive impact in that little girl's life to where she will always have a father. No question. She never has to question.
Yeah. You're also changing. We're talking about generational trauma.
Generational trauma, yeah.
Which, if anyone's like me and you've been very churched, is probably a triggering phrase. But but I've thought about it really differently in the past few years, because I think of it more so of you repeat the things that you've seen, right? Like I think growing up it was kind of like you will be this way no matter what you do. But I think now it's just a very practical, tangible thing to me, where if you haven't seen a good marriage, you haven't seen a good example of parenting, you haven't had a good father in your life, the chances are very likely that you end up repeating the same things that you've seen many times if you don't heal them. And so you are part of that healing process, so that hopefully she never has to, repeat the things that she was seeing as a child.
I received that, and I appreciate you saying that. And that is essentially my thought process of where I'm coming from. My parents divorced, and although they divorced later on in life, I can tell for at least my youth that they weren't happily married, or they had enjoying moments or fulfilling moments. And moreover, to my points, it's intention. It's intentional. I lead with intentions. So that's why the tactfulness, and when you define the word tact, it's just a strategic means to get to a goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I'm aiming for. And the goal is to have better connections, more fulfilling connections, more soul food like this.
In what way can you commit to loving more?
By showing up for all the men to help them build, strengthen, and sustain their long-term relationships. We were talking about it a little earlier that, with my tactics, I would want to create tacticians. I would want to create a group of men, right, or be a part of a group of men who are able to tactfully overcome any conflict that comes their way, especially in a relationship, so they can keep their family and sanity intact. So that for me would be the biggest way I could commit to love, is by helping other couples build and strengthen and sustain it.
I love that. And I think you are absolutely the right person to do that. And you are already on your way. I will ask it a little differently, because I mean it a little differently.
Okay.
What is something that you personally need to work on, where you're like wondering what it is that you're personally working on to improve in your own life?
Man, that's a good question. It's a lot different than the other question. I wasn't prepared for that one. My area of improvement would be more open.
Okay.
Have more of an open mind. When, with the concept of tactfulness, I look for patterns. So when I see a pattern, then I know how to respond to it. However, that's just me assuming that pattern is what I'm putting my own spin on it, my own meaning to it. So if I can work on having a more open mind and gaining more clarity before I'm like, oh, I know what this is, and then I just do that, it would help me not be so dismissive in certain situations. It would help me not be judgmental in certain situations where I'm wrongfully categorizing a situation or scenario. So being more open-minded would definitely be a way where I could commit to love and be better with it.
How does that feel for you?
It is definitely, like I said, an area of improvement, because I recognize that we're not all the same, and not every situation is the same. Although it may seem similar, it's not the same. So you have to treat every situation with respect and dignity to the nuances that it brings. And that's why me having an open-minded and not just immediately going into tactful mode would best suit me.
I love that for you. I think that based on what you've shared and what I can assume it's like to be in your head based on everything you shared,
It's constant.
that would make sense. So I definitely will be wishing you the best for that, and also that it just makes your world a better, more beautiful, colorful place.
Cheers. I appreciate that. I'm humbled by that, and again, I appreciate this opportunity where I get to share a little bit about my space in love and your space of love.
Yeah.
It's the universal answer.
Yes. Okay, so last question.
All right.
So I am trying to start a global love movement.
Okay.
Will you join me?
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. 100%. Cheers. Full send. Boom.
Awesome.
I support that.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for not just in this time, but just in everything that you've shared about yourself, and just sharing so much of your journey.
Yes.
And your heart with me. I really appreciate who you are as a person, everything that you've been through to come out with the passion and the purpose that you have. Yeah. We didn't even get to all the alliteration. We missed so much alliteration. We should have recorded our whole.
Yeah. Definitely. more to come if you follow TactfulLove on Instagram. More to follow on that.
Which everyone should. If you have a relationship, want to get in a relationship, I think it pretty much applies to everyone.
Yeah. Just how to approach love tactfully. That's it.
Yes. You'll get a lot of one-liners that we had in our conversation earlier. That you had in
things to remember.
The conversation earlier, not me.
Yeah.
A lot of good alliteration. It was awesome. So definitely go follow if you would like to learn how to better improve your relationship.
I'm humbled by that. Yes, definitely. You guys can choose to get a discovery call with me, as well as you can book a session with me. We can have a growth conversation about your relationships.
And virtual. They don't have to be located here in
anywhere,
Jacksonville.
Anywhere. Yeah, you can call. Again, we would be a Zoom call or a Google Meet, whatever we're able to assign. But we'll definitely get you the tactics you need to overcome any conflict resolution.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, how did we meet?
We met at a content creator meetup in this very hotel that we are in right now.
Yes.
It was, you were one of the first people that I meet. Granted, I came to the party late. I didn't realize that
you came with gifts.
Yeah.
You did come with gifts.
Yeah.
You were the only other person other than myself that came with gifts. I was hosting Jack's Creators that day, and we were doing an event to benefit children around the holidays, which is why we're asking people to bring in gifts to donate. And when you showed up, Ryan introduced you kind of to the group, and you shared with us what you were doing and kind of your purpose, your passion, your platform. And I remember you said something about, because you're just starting and you weren't sure if you had the credibility. And you had mentioned before that you were a life coach.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
And so I was sharing with you that yes, you do have that credibility based on, just being a life coach and kind of the way that you approach problems as a life coach, but now even more so knowing you. Now I just know you have the credibility based on just your entire life. Your background, what you've been through personally, like how you look at things and face into things, the tact in which you approach every situation and every relationship.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate everything that you and Miss Thrifty.
Miss Thrifty Rose.
Yeah. You guys both were very helpful. You gotta tell her I said hi.
Yes, I will. I'll tag her.
Yeah, she's gonna see all of this. Yes. That's great.